What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Life Outside podcast. I am currently out in Tasmania. Just set up camp at a lovely little campsite on the west coast. There's actually quite a few people pulling up to camp like right next to me at the moment. So I'm going to be recording this amongst plenty of other outdoor lovers. Hopefully I don't disturb them and they don't disturb me too much. But I've just come off the Overland Track here in Tasmania. One of the best hikes in Australia. I can honestly say that after completing it. And we're going to do a little bit of a recap of the Overland Track today. I'm going to share a bit of my experience and then also answer some questions from you guys that you've sent through regarding the Overland Track. For those who don't know, the Overland is definitely one of the most iconic trails in Australia, located in Tasmania, which is a big island off the southeast coast of the mainland. And people come from all over the world to hike the Overland Track, an incredible multi-day hiking trail. A lot of resources have been put into it over the past couple of decades, so it's a really nice, accessible hike for a lot of people, but you can kind of make it as hard as you want to as well, because there's a lot of like really hectic side trips, which is what really drew me in. I'm going to go over a few key things to know about the Overland Track, and then, going to share a bit about my journey. As I said, I've just come off the trail, so it's fresh in the mind, and I had the best time. So, location, it's in incredible Mountain Lake St. Clair National Park, which is sort of like central Tasmania. Incredible wilderness, incredible national park, and the Overland Track is kind of like the crowning jewel of that national park. Traverses the full length of the park, and it's about 65 kilometers long, the Overland Track, without any side missions. You guys know me. I did choose to head out on quite a few side missions, most of them in fact. And so if you were to do like every side trip, it's closer to 150 Ks long. I think I ended up walking 135 kilometers, missing a couple of the side trails. But like I said just before, you can kind of make it as easy or as hard as you want by like adding all these side trails into the trip. How hard is the trail? Yeah, once again, you can make it as hard as you want. I would say if you just walk the Overland Track without any side missions, it's a very beginner-friendly trail. There's really bougie huts along the whole track, and the walking is super easy. A lot of boardwalk, not too many hills. But yeah, if you chose to do every side mission, I would probably lean towards the trail being more of an advanced trail, because some of the mountains and the peaks and the trails you do off the main Overland Track are actually really technical and really difficult. And the weather also can get pretty bad out there, so that would also increase the difficulty. Like if you had a terrible week of rain and cold and like potentially snow, it'd be a lot harder. I was lucky enough to have mostly really good weather. How do you get onto the trail? There is a permit system, a booking system for the Overland Trail. So you just go onto the Tassie Parks website, and you have to purchase a permit, which is about 300 Australian dollars. So yeah, definitely not like free or the cheapest trail, but once you get on the trail, you will, I think, definitely agree with me that it's well worth the price. The huts, the accommodation alone on the trail is just, it's like fancy Airbnbs throughout, and so that $300, is money well spent in my opinion. And the permits book out really quickly when they open. You need a permit for, I think it's between October and May, so sort of late spring, summer and autumn. That's the peak hiking season. In the winter, it's like covered in snow and ice, so like a very different trail. And as far as I'm aware, you don't need a permit during that time, but obviously, you have to be pretty experienced hiking in the wilderness in snow to want to do it then, and not many people are out there. So during the peak months, you do need a permit, and they book out really quick. In saying that, people cancel their permits all the time, same with pretty much any trail. So I think I booked my permit like a week before coming out here because someone had cancelled, and I walked the trail with my mate Hirsch. I think he booked the permit like even less than a week before we came over. And so you can nab up a permit or two, but like say you're with a group of 5 or more, you definitely want to book your permits well in advance, months and months and months in advance, to actually secure them. They limit the daily hikers each day, so they limit the amount of permits they sell each day. I think it's 30 or 35 per day. So still quite a lot actually. And you'll see, so many people out on trail. It's super busy. But they limit the numbers for like environmental conservation to keep the trail in good shape and to, avoid overuse essentially. And like I mentioned, there's huts along the whole trail. I think there's enough huts to do like 7 nights, and they're all just so nice. Like the nicest huts I've ever stayed in by far. Fully enclosed, toilets, water, bunks, like a full like shared kitchen space with benches and dining tables, and super, super cool. But there's also like really nice camping options at every hut, tent platforms and like sometimes grassed areas. So you can kind of do the trail however you want. The weather and conditions on the OT can vary a lot. You can experience like every season in a day. We had like rain, crazy wind and cold temperatures some days, and then we had like really dry, hot days as well. You have to do like a briefing before you get onto the trail with like a ranger or someone, and they talk very seriously about how fast the conditions can change up in the high country on the Overland Track. Hypothermia is a real threat. People have died out there, that kind of stuff. So be aware that you kind of have to be prepared for any conditions. You need wet weather gear, cold weather gear, and also something like, lightweight to hike in if it's really hot. So fair bit of gear required. Yeah, the scenery is it's beautiful. It's the reason people hike the trail. It is so beautiful out there. There's wildlife, wombats, Tassie devils, quolls, echidnas. Unfortunately, didn't see all of those, but plenty of life. And then it's just really diverse high country. You've got like alpine moors, you've got the high lakes and the tarns. You walk through a lot of like pretty dense forest, like I think it's rainforest in some sections, and then obviously just like epic mountains everywhere. So you're always getting just like 10 out of 10 views. And then like if you take some of the side trips up those mountains, it's just like continuously world-class views everywhere you go. The Overland Track is a really good trail if you don't get the point already. Let's recap my journey. Just got off trail with my mate Hirsch. We actually met up with another friend of ours, Jenny, on trail as well. She actually started a day before us, but we caught up to her. And we met another lad named Nathan, a young gun backpacker from Britain. So we ended up having like a little group of 4 of us. We walked, a lot of the trail together, which was super fun. And walked the trail over 6 days and 5 nights, which I think was about normal for most of the people that we met on trail. Like I said, there's 35 starters a day, so we made a ton of friends on trail that we sort of hiked with fairly often and spent time with at the huts. And most people doing it over like 6 to 7 days. I think that's pretty normal. Gives you enough time to stay at most of the huts and also do like quite a bit of the different side trips. You definitely could do the trail in like 3 days if you wanted to really send it and not walk everything. And you could also walk it very easily in like 10 days if you wanted to really make the most of the trail. But I think 6 to 8 days is probably the sweet spot. We chose 6 days. Day 1, we started at Cradle Mountain. We got a bus to Ronnie Creek. That is the northern terminus, the start point of the OT. And we had about 11 kilometers to walk on day 1 to Waterfall Hut, which is the first hut on the trail. We were super stoked to get out there, Hirsch and I, but the weather was terrible on day 1, unfortunately for us, which also kind of sucks because like one of the main side trips is on day 1 up Cradle Mountain, which is like a super famous mountain in Tassie, absolutely epic. But the weather was shocking. We got up into the high country, like a big climb to start, and super cold, super wet, super windy. There was no way we were climbing Cradle. We just kind of like got through and slogged it to the hut. So it took us a couple hours, but we didn't see anything, which sucked. I came back at the end of the hike, so that was yesterday for me, and I re-hiked Cradle Mountain. So I just did a day hike up there, and it is pretty damn epic. I had good weather on the return trip, so definitely recommend getting to the summit if the weather is good. And like I said, after a couple hours, we arrived at Waterfall Hut, and I was just like, I knew the huts were going to be good, but I was blown away. The hut was so nice, just like a fancy Airbnb in the middle of nowhere. We rocked in soaking wet. We met the caretakers, and then we sort of like mingled with all the other hikers. Met Nathan, the UK lad, and a bunch of other epic people that would soon become good friends on trail, and like played cards, had food in the hut, dried off. It was really nice. Day 2 was another similarly short day, but once again could be lengthened with side trips. We woke up to the terrible weather continuing, unfortunately. So the side trip up Barn Bluff, which is another big mountain, actually it's the 5th highest mountain in Tasmania, was a no-go because it was just rainy and wet and cloudy again. So we decided to not attempt that. We did take one small side trip though to Lake Will, which is just a really nice scenic lake, only a couple kilometres off trail. And we took a swim there, even though it was freezing cold, and ended up making it to Windermere Hut, which is, the second hut on trail. After a couple of hours, I think it was 11 kilometres on day 2. Windermere Hut was freaking beautiful. Yeah, better than the first hut. Not necessarily the hut itself, but just like the location of it. So epic, the views. And there's like a lake right next to the hut, Windermere Lake. We took a dip in there. We had caught up to Jenny at that point, so there was the group was forming, and we had like all afternoon at Windermere Hut because we got there so early. So playing a lot of cards and hanging out with everyone, which was really good. Day 3, this is where the weather got a little bit better, actually a lot better. We had amazing weather on day 3, and so we could actually take advantage of that and do some of the side trips properly, which meant it was going to be a big day. We walked 26.5 kilometres on day 3 from Windermere to Pelion Hut, and it was a really hard day. We ended up taking what I think is probably not a very popular side trip, but in hindsight was probably one of the best side trips, up Mount Pelion West, and that ended up being a mission. We got to the junction where you go up to Pelion West, and it was like you could barely even see it. There wasn't even a sign. It was just like this rough trail through the forest, and we're like, hell yeah, let's do this. Ended up bush bashing up for a couple of hours, and then you get to like the open ridgeline of the mountain, and then it gets really steep and really rocky, and it's just like climbing and boulder hopping for ages till you reach the true summit. I think it took us 6.5 hours return to do Pelion West, and it was like a 6-kilometre return trip. So that's like, slower than 1 kilometre per hour. But the summit was a lot of fun. The true summit was like really sketchy. We climbed up this like pillar rock that marked the highest point, and there's just like crazy drops on either side, and there's nowhere really to sit. It's just boulders everywhere. You can check out my Instagram. I think I'll put a few photos up there soon of that summit. It was insane. Pelion West is one of those side trips that turn the Overland Track from like an easy trail into like an advanced trail, because it's really hard, really technical, and like quite dangerous. You definitely would not go up there in bad weather, and you definitely wouldn't go up there unless you're like really confident in your fitness and ability, which our group was. All 4 of us made it to the summit. Like I said, took us almost 7 hours, but we did it. And then, we had, I think, like 10 kilometers to go after we got back down from there. We made another quick side trip to the old Pelion Hut. There was a really nice swimming hole there. Had a dip in the freezing water, and then made it to the new Pelion Hut where we spent the night. Once again, Pelion Hut was incredible. So beautiful. A bit of a different style. Some of the previous huts, I think it was a bit older, but incredible views. There's another side trip called Mount Oakley, and like you have just perfect views of the entire mountain from the veranda of Pelion Hut. So we enjoyed sunset there. Went for a bit of wildlife spotting after dark. Unfortunately, didn't see anything. This entire trip, actually, I was just looking for wombats, and I could not find any the entire trip, even though they're out there and everyone else seemed to see them. I've never seen a wombat before, but I went for a bit of a hunt at Pelion Hut with no luck. Speaking of Mount Oakley, that's another side trip that's pretty extensive, and we decided actually not to take that one because we had gotten to the hut so late after the 7-hour mission on Pelion West, so we skipped Mount Oakley. But I heard from some others that did it that it was really, really nice. So another one that you could definitely take that's probably pretty doable for most people. And then day 4, Pelion Hut to Kiora Hut. It was about 20 kilometers for us. And this is actually the day I was looking forward to most on the Overland, because one of the side trips is up Mount Ossa, which is actually the highest mountain in Tasmania. And over the last few years, I've been on a bit of a sort of side quest whenever I get the chance to summit the highest mountain in every state of Australia. And Mount Ossa is one of 3 that I have left. And so, yeah, I was really excited to make the summit. Unfortunately, the weather turned again on day 4 for us. It wasn't very good at all, but I was very determined to summit Ossa regardless. Before that, though, I took a quick side trip up Pelion East, which is another really cool mountain, actually. Kind of like a really quick little climb, but I had some good views up there, and I was the only one up there. It was super cool. And then our group made the summit of Mount Ossa. It was freezing and windy and clouded out, so we saw absolutely nothing. But the climb up was really fun, really technical as well, but a lot of fun, really climby. And we made the summit and climbed up to the high rock pillar on the summit to get to the true high point. And like I said, saw nothing but had a bloody good time regardless. And that was the highest point in Tassie summited, which I'm stoked, ticked that one off the list. And despite the bad weather, yeah, had a really good time on day 4. Ended up getting to Kiora Hut, which Kiora Hut might be my favorite hut on the whole trail. It's hard to say. The first 4 nights were all just 10 out of 10 huts and locations, but Kiora had a really, really cool design, another really epic view of some nearby mountains. And I think, yeah, we got there at 4 p.m. and I think I just had a really good time at that hut. We did a big stretching session with 15 of the people at the hut, all the friends we kind of made up until that point. We were sharing hiking stories and all kinds of stories with everyone and playing cards and eating good food. It was a good time. I loved Kiora Hut. Day 5. Day 5 was our biggest day on trail, and probably the only day that really, really challenged me. Obviously, I've done quite a lot of hiking in my time, so, 10, 20, 25 kilometer days are pretty relaxed, but we ended up doing 35 kilometers on day 5 from Kiora to, what was the hut's name? We skipped Windy Ridge Hut, which is one that typically a lot of people will stay at. And we went to, I didn't write it down, but there's another hut off trail, Pine Valley Hut. That's right, Pine Valley Hut. So, yeah, that's why it ended up being a really long day, because we kind of double hutted. But while we're still on the Overland Track, we took the side trails down to all the waterfalls, which is this section sort of known for. 3 really incredible waterfalls. We swam at 2 of them. They were beautiful, not the biggest in the world, but they were pretty substantial, with plenty of icy cold water flowing, and yeah, so fun. And then eventually we got past Windy Ridge Hut and then took a turn off the Overland Track towards Pine Valley, and we were expecting it to be pretty quiet off trail out in the middle of nowhere, but that hut was completely full and the campsite was completely full, so we just scrambled to find a place to set up our tents. That was actually the only night we tented on the trail, but luckily we found a spot. And then I think we set up camp at 6 o'clock, and we had planned to go up a mountain called the Acropolis that night for sunset. And yeah, we got in so late, but we're screw it, we're going to climb it anyway. Ended up being almost as hard as Pelion West a bit earlier in the trail. A bit of a slog, but Nathan, Jenny and I, we made it up just before sunset. Really, really steep, a lot of vert, a bit climby, very climby actually towards the summit. And geez, I got to say, that was the best view of the entire Overland Tracks. The Acropolis summit at sunset blew my mind. I'll definitely share some photos from that summit. I took my camera along the whole trail, so I've got some really cool photos that'll be up on Instagram. But that was definitely the highlight for me. But because we got up there at sunset and it was so late, pretty much the entire descent was in the dark. And, parts of it were a little sketchy, but we made it. We made it back down to camp around 10 p.m. And yeah, like I said, ended up doing 35 kilometers that day with something like 2,000 meters of vertical gain, but was very satisfied and fulfilled if I was really tired as well. And that was actually our last full day on trail. So day 6, we were walking out, and yeah, we were a bit rushed on day 6, unfortunately. So can't say I really got to enjoy it that much. Although I do like walking fast. But we had a bus taking us back to our car at 2 p.m. that we had booked in. So we essentially had to walk, I think it was about 26 kilometers in about a 6-hour period by the time we left camp, which wasn't too bad. I think Hirsch struggled a little bit moving that fast. He hasn't hiked as much as I have, but luckily we both made it just before the bus left. So we walked around Lake St. Clair. It was really beautiful, but the trail was a bit like rooty and it wasn't super free flowing. So we kind of pushed pretty hard to make it in. And that's where we said goodbye to Jenny and Nathan, who were going off on some other adventures. And that was the end of the Overland Track. Incredible. Like I said, I think we walked about 130 kilometers total. So about double the length of the actual Overland Trail itself, which, 90% of people out there are walking, a fair few side routes. So I think that's, fairly normal to walk quite a lot longer than the OT distance itself. Some of the older folk maybe just did a couple of the side routes like Mount Ossa and Crater Mountain. Some of the more keen hikers were walking almost every side route. I think we skipped, Barn Bluff and Mount Oakley, and otherwise we did pretty much all the side trips, which was really cool. But yeah, Overland Track, absolutely epic, 10 out of 10. I've had a little think. I think it would be in my top 5 multi-day hikes in Australia, which is a big call because there's some incredible trails out there. But it was just that good. I think without the side trips, it wouldn't nearly be as highly rated for me. But including, some of the mountains like Cradle Mountain, Pelion West, Mount Ossa, the Acropolis, that was a freaking epic hike. And obviously I was hiking with some incredible people as well. We had some good weather overall, which, all that makes the experience just elevated. But I loved it so much. And it's a very sought after trail. Like the permits sell out really quickly, like I said. So if you're interested, get on it, book in, and walk the OT. I could not recommend it enough. All right, you guys sent over a few questions, so I'm going to end the episode by answering some of those questions. It's going to be a bit of a shorter one today. Just a quick trail recap. Let me know if you guys like this type of episode. I definitely want to include, some more trail recaps, some more like question and answer type videos amongst all the conversations and interviews that I do on the show. I think it could be pretty dynamic to mix all of it sort of together. Also, it's handy that I'm doing a shorter episode now because this campsite is filling up fast. As I'm talking, just cars are rolling in. People are looking at me like really strangely because I'm just talking into a microphone by myself and there's like a camera set up. So we'll get through these Q&A questions. Thanks for sending them in. I popped a little prompt on Instagram and you guys were pretty curious. First question, did you prefer using a tent pad or staying in the huts? Definitely the huts. I mean, there's pros and cons to both, obviously. The huts are really full, get really full on the Overland Track. Like almost all the bunks were taken every night and quite a lot of people were forced to camp if they got in late. But we managed to stay in the hut every night that we wanted to, except for that last night off trail at Pine Valley. And the huts are just so awesome. You're sharing, bunk rooms with a lot of people. So, there's people that snore. There's people that, move around and people's mats make a lot of noise. So I don't have too much issues sleeping with all that going on. But if you do, you might hate that and prefer to tent, which I think some people definitely do. But yeah, I love sleeping in the huts. The hut experience was just incredible. It's weird even calling them a hut. They're like Airbnbs. They're huge and fancy. They're so nice. And just hanging out with everyone and talking about the trail and playing cards and then, sleeping in really nice bunk rooms was a highlight for me. So despite having a tent, I would choose to sleep in the huts most of the time. Next question, which side trips did you do? Which one did you enjoy the most? So I've kind of gone over a bunch of the side trips I'd done already, but which one did I enjoy the most? The Acropolis definitely was the best views, probably partly because it was sunset, but also just an incredible mountain and viewpoint. Pelion West was probably my favorite overall experience on a side trip though, just because it was really challenging. Had the whole crew there, like all four of us in our little group, and it was a bit of a slog, but like so satisfying to make the top. And it was like, a bit sketchy and all that, which makes it really memorable. So yeah, Pelion West and the Acropolis would be my top two. Do you have to purchase a permit? Those huts are so luxurious. Yep, you have to purchase a permit. I think I've probably doubled up on a few of these questions because I've already answered them. But yeah, permits are about 300 Australian dollars, well worth the price. And yes, they seem to reinvest like all that permit money straight back into the trail. Boardwalks everywhere, there's rangers throughout the trail looking after you and making sure everyone's safe. And yeah, once again, those huts definitely were not cheap to construct or maintain, and so your permit money goes to good use. Water and food. Did you use mostly fresh water or taps at the huts? Yeah, so there's really nice water at all the huts, really nice water tanks, which we mostly did use. I didn't actually filter really any of the tank water, although it is recommended to. It was really nice, but quite a few times we also got water out of streams or like tarns. There's quite a lot of water up on the high country. A few rivers, streams everywhere, little lakes and tarns everywhere. So it's one of those trails where you just don't ever need to carry much water. I don't think I carried more than a litre at any point, and even that was probably plenty. And I just took, regular food on trail, just typical hiking food, some dehydrated meals and rice and ramen and candy and like cheese and salami and, all the kind of normal stuff I take on trail. Optimum amount of days if you want to experience all the side trips comfortably. That is a very good question, and definitely depends on your fitness level for sure. Some of the side trips for some people are, an all-day sort of endeavor. I'd say if you have like relatively good hiking fitness and are quite comfortable on steep technical trails, 7 days would be good enough to do every side trip. Like I said, I did almost all the side trips in 6 days. The first couple of days were pretty chill because we were forced to skip a couple of the side trips. But other than that, like every day was pretty jam-packed, trying to fit it all in. So if you had 7 days, you would pretty comfortably do everything with good fitness. If you are a bit of a slower hiker or maybe not super confident but still wanted to do every side trip, first of all, I'd probably not recommend doing Pelion West because it's pretty crazy. But 8 or 9 days is probably a bit smarter for you if you're a bit slower. Next question. How would you compare it to similar Tasmanian tracks such as the Western Arthurs, Port Davey and South Coast Track, and how would you rank them? That's a good question. I've done quite a few multi-day walks in Tasmania now. The ones you mentioned I've done, plus I've done Mount Anne, the Mount Anne circuit. I did the Walls of Jerusalem circuit just before the Overland. I'm actually about to head out to do Frenchman's Cap tomorrow as I'm recording this. But the Overland Track would probably be top 2 or 3 in Tasmania. The Western Arthurs Traverse will probably always be my favourite hike. Just epic. I also love the South Coast Track. That would maybe be 2nd or 3rd, but the Overland would be, amongst those trails. It's incredible. It's definitely a lot easier than some of the other trails I've just mentioned, especially the Western Arthurs and the South Coast, but it's just as beautiful. So the Overland Track for most people is probably what I'd recommend because it's the most accessible for the most amount of people and just incredibly beautiful as well. My kit leans towards ultralight, but people's Overland Track lists seem to carry a lot. Was your kit any different from your usual setup? Yeah, that's a good point. People's packs on the Overland Track were heavy and very big, which surprised me. But in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense because I think the Overland Track attracts the everyday hiker to head out overnight hiking because it's super beginner friendly. And the everyday hiker definitely doesn't have the knowledge or just doesn't have access to super ultralight gear. I went mostly with just my normal hiking kit, so I was definitely the lightest pack weight that I saw on trail by a long shot in some cases. But I did take a few, extra comforts just because I knew it was such an easy trail. And like even the hard parts of the trail, which are the side trips, you drop your pack at the junction anyway. So having a bit of a heavier pack doesn't actually matter. So I had like a pillow, a couple of decks of cards, just a few like luxury items to have a bit more enjoyment throughout the trail. But you can definitely go as ultralight as you normally would on trail, and you'd be just fine. I think you can get away with a bit of extra weight though. What's the most ideal time of year to do the track? Yeah, definitely summer and probably late spring. So about now, I did it in early March. I think, yeah, probably from like November to March is the best time, because you're least likely to get terrible weather. But it rains or snows like something like 300 days in that region of Tasmania. So no matter what, you're going to probably get some bad days. But yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend like winter hiking the Overland Track unless you have a lot of experience snow traversing and that kind of thing. Did you see some wildlife? Yeah, I think I mentioned it a bit earlier. There's lots of really cool wildlife out on the Overland Track, and I was so desperate to see a wombat for the first time ever, but it wasn't to be, despite some searching. I did see plenty of like paddymellons and wallabies. I saw spotted quoll, which is really cool, but yeah, no wombats, no echidnas, no Tassie devils, even though they're definitely out there. And yeah, some other hikers saw all of those animals. So yeah, if you love wildlife, it's also just a great trail because you'll be able to see all these really cool Australian marsupials. All right, that is all the questions I have. What is that? 33-minute recording. That is, yeah, a nice, succinct, short episode of the Life Outside podcast. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that little overview of the Overland Track. Yeah, I can't recommend the trail enough. I had the best time out there, and hope you guys hike it too. If you've already hiked it already, feel free to let me know how you enjoyed it. And as always, thanks for listening. Rate the show 5 stars if you did enjoy it. It helps me out a ton. The podcast has been growing, and so many of you guys have been giving me some great feedback. But if you haven't rated the show yet, please do that. Follow the show, leave a comment, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.